There's a war being waged by conservatives that are against the teaching of our children things in the schools like the nasty things that happen with racism and slavery within our country, because they're afraid that sometimes those kids might begin to dislike the country because of the truth. Yes, that's what they've been saying. So anyway, this effort is claimed a new hostage in this effort to turn over real history, and that hostage is the Holocaust, if you can believe it or not. Let's go to some of the details from NBC News, who was reporting on this. So there was a top administrator at the Carroll Independent School District, and that's in Southlake, Texas. And she advised teachers last week that if they have a book about the Holocaust in their classroom, they should also offer students access to a book from a quote, opposing perspective. Her name is Gina Peddy, and she's the Carroll School District's Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. She made the comment Friday afternoon after a training session in which books teachers can have in the classroom libraries. So this training came 4 days after this same school board, responding to a parent's complaint, voted to reprimand a 4th grade teacher who kept an anti-racism book in her classroom. We're gonna get to all of those details behind that because that's appalling. But first, let's listen to this exchange that Gina Peddy had with the teachers that were trying to figure out what we should do about these anti-books that they want us to implement in our classrooms, just in the libraries. Let's listen.
As you go through, just try to remember the concepts of 3979 and make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has opposing, that has other.
How do you oppose the Holocaust?
I know. What? Believe me, that's come up.
So number the stars.
So the Carroll School District, she's the spokesperson, Karen Fitzgerald. She said that the district is trying to help these teachers figure out how to comply with this new law in Texas, where they're talking about making sure that you have the even 1 point counterpoint in Texas when it comes to teaching about history. This is what she had to say. Our district recognizes that all Texas teachers are in a precarious position with the latest legal requirements. So she pointed out the Texas law, how it requires teachers to provide balanced perspectives, not just during classroom instruction, but in the books that are available to students in class during their free time. Our purpose is to support our teachers in ensuring that they have all the professional development, resources, and materials that are needed. And also the politician that wrote the law, he was also asked about this by NBC News as well. And he says, that's not what the bill says. Because these teachers and also these administrators are like, well, we got to comply with the law, so we have to give you guys the opposite of the Holocaust, right? That's not what the bill says, is what he said in an interview with about their guidelines. I'm glad that we had this discussion to help elucidate what the bill says, because that's not what the bill says. Now, NBC News didn't elaborate further on what he did say the bill says, because nothing else was quoted from him about what the bill says. I have a feeling there wasn't much else you could say the bill says besides we need to even out anything that they say that talks about, this is what was in the bill, paraphrased. Anything that has controversial social issues that maybe might offend some of the parents and folks that are within the school district. So let's make sure we have something like that. So this particular administrator who brought up the Holocaust, she gave that as an example because the teachers were like, well, what do we do? Because there's been all these stipulations put in place for us to make sure we censor certain books. We don't know which books that they don't want us to teach because we're teachers. We're not trying to push their political agendas. And so now we found ourselves here.
Yeah, so this started with nonsense about critical race theory. Now, critical race theory is not taught in the schools, but conservative media lied about it repeatedly. And so parents became convinced that it was being taught. Not that they even know what it is. They have no idea what critical race theory is. And so they would go and they'd barge in and say, you can't teach this stuff. So Texas passed a law saying that you can't teach about racism and these other issues without giving the other side. And there was an actual teacher who was reprimanded for having a book about anti-racism. Now, what's the other side of anti-racism? Is it pro-racism? Is that what we're supposed to teach the kids? I don't know, Texas passed the law and it's a real law. So I don't know what they want them to teach. It isn't about critical race theory. That's a nuanced theory that's taught at law schools at the graduate level, right? So what they're actually saying is don't teach about racism. We don't want you to have freedom of speech. We don't want you to teach real history. We want you to teach, well, quite literally, whitewashed version of history, where America never did anything wrong, black people never suffered. And by the way, when you teach the wrong version of history, they then get to say, well, look at black people, they're poorer than white people, it must be their fault. But wait a minute, how did they get there? It's like getting when the Irish first came in from the Great Potato Famine, and we took them in, and at the time we didn't ask questions. We were great, welcoming country. If you don't teach about the famine, and you see all these poor Irish people, and you go, well, I guess the Irish are lazy and bums, and that's why they're all poor, and they deserved it. And you remember, this is a meritocracy. So if you're rich, you have merit, and if you're not rich, you don't have merit. But wait a minute, the history tells us how we got there. I don't care, teach pro-racism as the other point of view. So that's the insane law that Texas passed. That's why that's a real conversation about the Holocaust, because I don't even know that the person who brought it up is a bad person.
Yeah.
I think that they're genuinely confused. Well, if we teach the Holocaust, should we teach something that says what? What's the opposite? That the Holocaust didn't happen, or it did happen and it was a good thing? Because we're having real conversations about teaching pro-racism, or that racism doesn't exist. So I don't know what to teach in Alice in Wonderland, right? And it's a great question. I don't know what to tell those teachers. Because the Republicans in Texas, Charlie Sykes just said this on TV, and he's a conservative. Okay, he's a conservative, decades-long conservative, talk show host in the middle of the country. He's like, the Texas Republicans are, he said, bat crap crazy, right? The actual version. That's because this is nuts. This is nuts to have this actual debate about whether we should teach whether the Holocaust happened or didn't happen, or whether it was a good thing or a bad thing in Texas. Sabrina.
I hope that if they do end up forcing these teachers to teach the opposite of the Holocaust, whatever that means, whether it's like Holocaust denial literature, I hope that, you know what, the teachers do end up showing that to the children, and they go line by line and they show them why it's wrong, how it's wrong, and how history will repeat itself if they actually take that seriously. Now, I hope that it doesn't end up coming to that, because why would you let these bigoted parents decide the school curriculum? That would be like passengers on a plane grouping up together, thinking that they could get to Florida faster, and so they overthrow the pilot. You know, like let the people do their jobs.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. See, because the thing is, the people doing their jobs is now become something where they're beginning to learn a different approach to how we should be learning about things. We got hidden so many real facts about our history as we grew up, and that's where our comfort zone has been. Being the powers that be, the comfort zone is that people didn't really know what's happened, or it's a sugar-coated version. Oh, there was this couple years of enslaved people, and a couple of them were treated badly, but you know what? We've gotten better. That's always the last part about this, not about how it has extended from that point on, and how from enslaved folks, it then went to people that were mistreated by their government, by the people, by authorities, by businesses, by doctors, by attorneys, to this day. So the system remains from where our beginnings were. So they don't want to teach the history, because then they'll have to learn about the present. And the present is where they're still controlling people and their belief systems and how they see things. That's why last summer's protest over police brutality was so angering for these folks. They're like, oh my God, there's people of all races out here now protesting something that we could just say it's those stupid black people who all got the same email and said to complain about police brutality and injustices in our justice system. Oh my God, now they're catching on. We have to cut off this information line as soon as possible. I mean, it's over the top. It's why it's crazy. It's why it doesn't make any sense. It's why it's cartoonish, because the people in power are like, oh my God, we have to stomp this out so badly that they've overstepped it so much that now we're talking about Holocaust, because that's the line that they don't want to cross. That's the line where we have learned about it from the beginning, how horrible that was, because it didn't happen here. It happened somewhere else. Oh my God, that bad guy Hitler did it. He's the only bad guy ever in history. We can talk about how bad and the horrors of that were, and we all know it. There's a few people who still deny it, that the horrors of that. But we can't talk about the horrors of our own country and our own suppression and our own, honestly, our own kind of genocide.
Yeah, I mean, Popovich, the coach of the Spurs the other day, said, we're celebrating Columbus Day in the year 2021. The guy was a genocidal maniac. It's like celebrating Adolf Hitler Day. Columbus would, I mean, we've talked about this before, and it makes people uncomfortable, but it's part of history, it's a fact. You could say, hey, don't tell people facts, but that would be a curious thing to say. But he would demand gold of the natives. If they didn't deliver, there was barely any gold there. He'd gone to the wrong place. That's why he called them Indians. He thought he was in India. The guy's also a moron, by the way. Anyway, he would chop off their hands. and then he would make them wear it around their necks. And he said, oh, this place is great. The Native women are so trusting, they're easy to rape.
How many of you guys learn that in class?
Okay, so that's a fact. That's a fact. And by the way, that is exactly what Texas passed the law about. Don't teach them that. Don't teach them. Christopher Columbus, wonderful white man who discovered America, and the natives here, the indigenous people, were inconveniently here, and obviously we had to butcher them. But shush, don't say that. Manifest destiny. Teach them that. God gave us the destiny to murder all of them and take over the whole country. But look, guys, then you also teach the great parts of America, the Marshall Plan. And yes, by the way, we're the guys who beat Hitler. And there's other great things that America did, and the Constitution in a lot of ways were wonderful. Of course, it was among the first democracies, if not the first one. You teach both because that's what happened. That's why it's called history. And finally, look, I think that they think, the ones that are genuine, they're wrong, but they think, oh, if you're teaching about racism, you're teaching everybody that white people are evil. No, if we taught people that white people are evil, that would also be racist. We're teaching anti-racism, okay? We're saying do not judge based on race. Unfortunately, we did it in the past. Unfortunately, we still do it to this day. And let's all work together to fix it so that we have equality. That's what we're teaching. If you think equality is oppression, that's a different problem. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of the right wing thinks. Now I gotta be equal to you guys? I feel oppressed. And that's the heart of this problem, and that's why they've passed these insane laws that make no sense. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.